Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you for joining us here on the program. Our guest is Dr. Frederick Beddingfield for this segment. He's founder, president, and CEO of Sienna Biopharmaceuticals. Now, that's a clinical stage medical dermatology and aesthetics company. And he's joining us here on the program today to talk about Sienna's focus on bringing innovations in biotechnology to the dermatology and aesthetic space. Welcome to the program, Dr. Beddingfield. How are you?
Thank you. Doing very well. Appreciate you having us on.
Thank you for taking the time. Now, you're a dermatologist, I understand. Let's talk about this company that you've founded, Sienna Biopharmaceuticals.
Absolutely. So I'm a dermatologist and trained as both an MD and PhD, and got involved in research in my career, originally when I was on the full-time faculty at UCLA, and then eventually went to work at a pharmaceutical company by the name of Allergan that worked in the dermatology and aesthetic space, and eventually was in charge of the dermatology research and development group there and stayed for 10 years. After that, I left to go to another small company called Kythera. That company was developing an innovative treatment, an aesthetic treatment for contouring certain parts of the body by eliminating fat. That company got bought by Allergan, ironically, and that was in 2015. So in 2016, we started Sienna Biopharmaceuticals with many of the same people and many of the same investors, and we're set out on a mission to bring innovative product to the dermatology space. And this time, our real focus has been on treatment of inflammatory skin conditions, and specifically trying to really bring a lot of the innovations that have come in biotechnology in the realm of those injectable antibodies and whatnot to the topical dermatology space. And if I can explain that for 1 second.
Yes.
It turns out most dermatology patients don't want systemic medicines, things that might suppress their immune system, but those medicines have been very effective in the past. So they end up being stuck with the topical treatments, and historically those have been topical steroids, which have a lot of side effects and are just not ideal treatments. You're not even supposed to typically more than a few weeks. So we've been working on bringing those sort of targeted, innovative therapies out of biotechnology to the larger dermatology population who wants to use topicals, so safe topicals, if you will.
Basically, they don't want something that is long-term, but they have to use it invasively on a long-term basis. They want something that they can use as a cream or a lotion whenever they feel like it.
That's right. Or, typically, actually, these conditions are chronic, so they would need to use it chronically on a daily basis, typically. I mean, in the very mild cases, they might use it intermittently, but most people are using this on a daily basis. And I think what they really want is something that treats the local skin disease without getting in their blood and affecting other organ systems or suppressing their immune system and putting them at risk of bad things that happen in that case.
So injectables versus topicals. Okay, that's basically the...
Right. Injectables are orals, versus topicals. And right now, a lot of the innovation has been more in the injectables and the orals. So we're trying to say, look, just because you're in this topical space doesn't mean you have to just use a steroid. We can give you a targeted, safe therapy that will have great effectiveness in your skin without the risk to the rest of your body.
Well, let's talk about one of these therapies that you've developed. Now, you're at clinical stage. Are you in testing now on a particular therapy?
That's right. Our lead drug is SNA-120. It's a topical TrkA inhibitor, and I can explain in a moment what that is, but it affects a specific part of the inflammation cascade that's really important in itch and psoriasis. And we just finished a phase 2B trial, meaning the next step would be to go to phase 3, which is the last couple of clinical trials before you would be evaluated for approval and get on the market. So we're late in the game at the very last step, so that's very exciting. And it really is geared towards treating the psoriasis of patients, but also improving their itch, which if you talk to psoriasis patients, they have two things really bother them: the visible plaques and the itch. and those are of equal importance to them. And so far, there's not been a therapy that really effectively treats both of those, and especially is safe. Those are kind of the boxes we wanted to check. Is we need something safe that's topical, something that treats the plaque, and something that treats it. And that's what we think we have in SNA 120.
You say you're headed toward phase 3 of these trials?
Right. We have gotten our data, and we are meeting with the FDA and to get them in on the design of those last 2 pivotal trials. Mm-hmm. The pivotal trials are the ones that the FDA will look at and say yes or no, this gets approved. And importantly, when we talk about the mild to moderate psoriasis population that we're aiming to help, that's 80% of the population. So you've got, about 7.5 million patients, and 80% of those, and the majority of those patients, say another 80%, have significant itch that bothers them. So that's kind of our target population right there. And it's a large population that is currently very much, their needs are not met.
Now, I would assume that your SNA 120, if it's on its way to phase 3, that you've got something else that you're just starting out with, or at least in the phase 2. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. We have another molecule, SNA 125, and it has a component to it that is like SNA 120, and that's the TrkA inhibitor. But it has another component, which is called a Janus kinase inhibitor. And the Janus kinases have been studied for the last several years, and there's a few on the market, including izotinib, which is an oral version. And they've shown phenomenal efficacy in conditions like atopic dermatitis and psoriasis, as well as some non-dermatologic like inflammatory bowel disease. At any rate, we have that component, that Janus TrkA inhibitor. So we would be targeting in one drug 2 different parts of the inflammatory cascade. But ideally, and this is what will have to be tested over time, with a safety profile where we're getting 10 and almost none of it into life.
How dependent is the success of SNA 125 on the success of SNA 120?
I think they're certainly related, but they're different. I think when you look at SNA 125, because of that added Janus kinase, I think there are certain disease states that SNA 120 would unlikely help. And the best example would be atopic dermatitis. And atopic dermatitis is quite different than psoriasis, but it still has visible plaques and itch as a hallmark of the disease. SNA 120 was tested in atopic dermatitis and didn't have a great enough effect to move that forward. But we know that kinases, which is the other part of SNA 125, do a disease. And so you would think of SNA 125 as being a really great drug to treat atopic dermatitis. And in that sense, these 2 drugs would be, mostly focused on different parts of the market potentially. And, if you follow this space, you might know a couple of years back, Anacor developed a drug, and it was a similar, very different mechanism of action, but safe topical, and that would get patients away from steroids, and improved modest efficacy, I would say. The projected sales of that drug are $2 billion a year, and Pfizer bought that company for that single asset for $5 billion. So I just use that as a way of helping to understand the size of the opportunity here. You've got a large number of patients really dying for something beyond just a topical steroid, which is, those steroids haven't really improved in the last 50 years. They work, but they have side effects, and they need new therapies.
Where can we go online and learn more?
Well, you can certainly go to the Sienna website, and that's www.siennabio.com. And Sienna, by the way, in this case is spelled with 2 N's, unlike the city in Italy. So on there, you can see our corporate deck. There's a lot of information on the disease states we're treating and the mechanisms that we're affecting with our drugs.
Dr. Beddingfield, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Well, I really appreciate it, and thank you very much, and I hope to talk to you soon again.
Great. You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Transcripts and audio of the program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au. and also at hpr.fm. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, listen in and download at SoundCloud, and be sure and visit our affiliates page at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au.
Thank you for listening to Health Professional Radio. We're very proud to be an independent broadcaster providing our content free of charge to you, the listener. One of the ways that we're able to remain free and independent is by having people like you become patrons. You can support Health Professional Radio simply by visiting hpr.fm and clicking the button that says Become a Patron. Your patronage of even just $1 a month lets us know that you're there, which in turn makes us more valuable to advertisers. And, of course, if you're able to afford more, then we would certainly appreciate the support. My name is Toby Longhurst from Health Professional Radio. Please visit hpr.fm, click the Become a Patron button, and support us if you can.